This is Francisco, and I'm going to show you an overview demo of the Apre.io platform. So Apre.io is a complete platform that includes both a app builder as well as a set of backend services, including a NoSQL database in the cloud, server code for server-side logic, a secure proxy so you can store API keys and other secrets so they're not exposed to the client, and API Express, which is enterprise integration middleware to connect to enterprise systems. So let me show you the app that we're going to build. It's a simple text messaging app that is going to connect to the Twilio SMS API in order to send messages, and is going to store the message history in a relational database, a SQL database that I have stored, that I'm hosting on the Amazon cloud. So let's go ahead and build the app, and let's call it a messaging app. And I've got to choose a framework. I'm going to use jQuery mobile. And once the builder loads, everything runs in the browser. Okay? So I can start creating the user interface of my app. I've got a set of user interface components that I can drag and drop onto the page. I can configure each of the components using the properties pane on the right. So this is going to be my messaging app. And I'm going to need an input component for the phone number. I'm going to need a text area component for the message. And then I'm going to need a send button, which I can stylize and give it an icon. Now I built the complete user interface of this portion of the app to send messages. Now what I need to do is I need to connect it to the Twilio API so they can actually work. So I'm going to go create new service, and this is going to be the Twilio REST service. And now I need to provision all of the credentials and parameters from my Twilio account. So I'm going to need this URL here to invoke the API. And this is going to be a post, not a GET, because I'm sending a message. And the request content type is URL encoded. I'm also going to need a proxy here because the Twilio API doesn't support cross-domain calls. And actually, I need one more thing, which is my credentials, so that I can actually execute or invoke the service. And for the purposes of this demo, to save time, I'm going to include my credentials in the URL. There's a more secure way of doing that as well. So next, I need to create the set of request parameters. What does this API require to be invoked? And Twilio requires three things. One is a to, a from, and a body. It's pretty simple. The to is the phone number, and the body is the message, and those are going to be configured in real time and during runtime by the user. And the from is going to be my Twilio phone number. And next, I need to configure the response parameters, but rather than do this by hand, I'm going to test the API first and then auto-create the response, you'll see. So I'm going to send myself a message just to test to make sure that this API is working. And when I test, I get the response from Twilio. You heard my phone ring, so that means that I received the message. And I get the status that the message is queued, so I know it was successful. Now, I can just simply import the response, the results of the test as the response, and the response gets created automatically for me. Now, obviously, I could have done all of this by hand, but it would have been very tedious and also error prone. So now that I've tested my API, I know it's working, I can add it to my page. So I go to the Data tab, I can add the service, and I can call it send SMS. Now what I need to do is map the user interface, the page essentially, all of the components on the page, to the service itself. So I'm going to map the input component to the to phone number. The text area is going to be the body itself. And that's all I need to map. I now need to tell the app what to do when somebody clicks the send button. And so on the click event, I want to invoke a service, and that's the only service I have. So that should do it. Now I'm completed this portion of the app. I should be able to send a text message. And so I'm going to test that right in the browser. And you can also test this in your own phone. If you have a QR code reader, you can read this code and run the same app as well. So let's test to see if it's working. Hello. And there it is. So I just received the message. So now I completed that first part of the app. The second part I need to do is I need to save all of the message history in this Amazon database. So let me show you. So I have on Amazon this database already. And in fact, I've already stored a few messages there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can read this message history in my app. And so I'm going to create a new page. And I'm going to call this history. And history. And we should give it a back button so I can get back to the main page in the app. And then all I'm going to need here is a list component that's going to list my messages. And I really only just need one because I'm going to loop through the messages that I'm going to get. Now, what I need to do is I need to connect to that database, and we're going to use the API Express component of the platform. I've already configured a connection to the Amazon database just to save time, but basically it's just fill out this form. So I'm just going to test it to make sure I can connect to it. I know I'm good. So what I need to do now is create a new project. I'm going to call this demo app. And I'm going to create a new service. This is going to be a new REST service for this SQL database. I could create a more complex service as well with a service editor, but this is a simple database table. And so I'm going to select my Amazon connection here and the message history table, which is the one I showed you before. And you can see here I have all of the fields in the table, as well as all of the APIs that I can create. Really, I only need to find and create for this app, but I might as well just get them all. I'm going to test to make sure that it's working. So this is the find API. I'm going to delete this parameter so I can retrieve the entire table just to test it to make sure it's working. You can see all of the messages that are in my Amazon database came here. So now that I know that this is working, I can go back to my app and add that service. So this is going to be from extensions API Express generator. And API Express is in the public cloud, but it could also be a private cloud deployment. And this is the project I just created. And I'm going to generate it. Let's give it the same default name. Now I should be good to go. If I reload the browser, I should see all of the services that were created for me so I can access this database. So what's nice is I get all of these services that I expected, so I can create, delete, find, get, update, but I also get an additional set of services that enable me to create an offline version of this app, such as go offline, go online, retry sync, and so forth. Okay. So now I need to add the find service to this page. And so I'm going to go to the data tab, and I'm going to add the find service so I can retrieve those messages. I'm going to say list messages. And now I need to map from the service to the page. And really, I just want the message itself here. But because I know I'm going to get multiple messages, I need to also map the collection or the array here to the list object itself. The next thing I need is I need to invoke this service every time this page loads. So whenever this page loads, or I can, so on page show, I can invoke that list messages service. Okay. One other thing I need is I need to be able to navigate to this history page. So I go to my start page, and I can add a button here, and we can call it history. And whenever that button is clicked, I want to navigate to my history page, and I can even give it a transition effect just for fun. So let's give it a shot. Let's see. Let's test it. And you can also test the app by refreshing your browser or by reading this QR code again. So if we click on history, there are the messages that I had stored in my Amazon database. So I know I can read those messages, and I can go back. Now there's just one more thing I need, which is I want to be able to store the new messages. So every time I send a message, I want to store that message in my message history. So I'm going to add a new service to this page, which is going to be the create service. And I'm going to call it send SMS. Sorry, I meant save SMS. And I'm going to map again from the page to the service, and I'm just going to get the phone number and the message itself. Okay, so save. And now the other thing I need to do is I need to invoke that new service. So on success of the send SMS service, I need to invoke the save SMS service. Okay, so that should do it. Let's save and test. And let's give it a go. I'm going to say hello there. Send. The message should have gone out. I just got it on my phone. You heard the beep. Let's check the history. And there's the new message. Finally, let's check the Amazon table. And let's refresh. And sure enough, there is my new message. Okay? So that shows you a complete overview of the Apria.io platform with both the Visual App Builder, which I've shown you here, as well as a lot of the backend services such as API Express. In addition, there are other services I didn't show you, such as the cloud database, the NoSQL database. This is based on MongoDB, as well as server code, which is based on the V8 engine.